Hey folks, another big issue that you guys have is printer setup, specifically the receipt printer. Part of the reason it's such a big issue is Windows, which most of us have, does auto updates unless you specifically turn it off and tell it not to. And every time it does an auto update, it usually resets all your computer and control panel settings back to the default. So this is usually a periodic issue where it throws all your settings off. So I decided to make a quick video walking you guys through how to set your printer back up or get it back to where it's supposed to be so that it prints correctly. Keep in mind, ePRO does not control your printer, um, being that it is a web-based system. All it's doing is sending the message to your computer, which is then going to the control panel and then sending the message to the printer. So all the setup happens in your control panel and then through your browser. So the browser controls the front side of the printer and the print functions, and your control panel controls the back side. So as long as you have all the correct drivers installed, it's pretty easy to adjust. If you need extra assistance with it, feel free to give me a call or shoot me an email, and I'd gladly walk you through it. But let's walk through it real quick. So first off, control panel, go to your devices and printers, and then pull up your printer. Depending on how it was set up or who set it up for you, whether you guys have an in-house IT guy or you guys are pretty tech savvy or whatever, it might say register, it might say receipt printer, or it might be the name of the printer. So maybe, star TSP 100, star TSP 650, so on and so forth. So you're going to right click that. It's a good thing to do on the computer that your printer is plugged into to set that printer as the default, so that way uh, it's going to automatically print to that every time you print a receipt. So the first thing we're going to go to is printing preferences. And this one's pretty simple. Layout should be the same. It should be portrait. It should never be set to landscape. Landscape is going to be more for like your office printers, or like photo printers. So portrait's the default for your receipt printers. You shouldn't have to worry about that. Page order, same thing, front to back. You shouldn't have to worry about that. You're really not printing pages on a thermal receipt printer. So really the only one you're going to mess with here is paper quality. Paper type, you can leave it set to automatically select or friction. Depending on the browser and what version you're using, you might have to play with this. Most everything on Chrome automatically select works fine, but sometimes on the newer versions of Firefox, I've seen it to where we've had to set it to friction in order for it to get the formatting right on Firefox so it's not all pixely. So that you might have to play with, but generally automatically select is the best bet here. And then media, you always want this as high image stability paper, not normal paper type. Otherwise, the quality and the coloration is going to be poor. So if you do normal paper type, it might be poor quality depending on the browser, and it's going to be faded. So you want high image stability paper. So if you make changes, make sure you hit apply. If you don't make any changes, apply won't even be a clickable option like it is right here. But make sure you hit apply, otherwise it sets it back to default, and then hit OK. The next thing we're going to do is go to printer properties. And then this one, we're going to go straight to device settings. Now here, depending on which printer you have and depending on which drivers you have, is going to depend on what settings you have here. So if you have the light version of the drivers versus the full version, you're going to have less settings here. So it's important to make sure, if you can, download the full version of the drivers from your printer's website. So paper, friction, this one's going to be 72 by receipt. If you have a different type of printer, you might have an 80 millimeter for some of the older printers, but generally most of your standard receipt printers are 72 millimeters, and you either want to do by receipt or 200. The difference is 200 millimeters, it will only print 200 millimeters in length. So the plus side is it'll keep all your receipts short. The downside is if you have a receipt message on there or if there's a lot of product, it's going to cut it off. So with 72 millimeter by receipt, it cuts off one line after the last line of text. So the size of the receipt depends on how much info is on it. So you can potentially have shorter receipts or longer receipts. So I would recommend setting up a 72 millimeter by receipt. Print mode, you're going to have that as raster, not line. So always set that at raster. Print type is going to be receipt. That should be default. It's not going to be ticket, so make sure it's on receipt. Speed doesn't really matter. Obviously, the faster the better, so it prints quick, so keep that on high. Density, you leave that as standard unless you're using different types of paper. That's just going to be if you are using like your super thin paper, which I wouldn't recommend. It tears really easily. And then the thick paper, also not a huge fan of, so just keep it on standard. Paper cut, that's up to you where you want it to cut, how you want it to cut. Usually everyone sets it up for a partial cut. So again, up to you. And then if you have a cash drawer, this one is sometimes a little hard to find. If you have a cash drawer that hooks up to your receipt printer electronically, it's going to hook up via a Ethernet cable. Most cases, sometimes it's going to be USB. Some printers, that's called a peripheral unit. And in some printers, it'll actually say cash drawer. So if it says cash drawer, it's easy. Click on it and set it to top or bottom. If it's peripheral, you're going to go peripheral unit 1, and then you're going to go type. Make sure the type is cash drawer, not buzzer. And then timing is going to be document top or document bottom. What that means is when it opens. So document top is going to open the cash drawer before printing the receipt. Document bottom opens the cash drawer after printing the receipt. So make sure you have that set up correctly. Like I said, if it says cash drawer, then if you click on it, then it's only going to have a timing and ask you what the timing is. In this case, it is peripheral. So then type is going to be cash drawer buzzer. Make sure it's cash drawer, and then set up your timing. Again, once you're done with all that, hit apply and then hit OK. Once you're done with that, you can come into ePRO, and if you don't have a customer to be rung up, I would recommend doing this next part for the test in the demo site. That way you can run an actual transaction but not have it go into your system or mess anything up. Otherwise, if you're doing it in your site, make sure you do it for like a labor item and you zero out the charge. That way nothing goes on your register report or your books. So you'll come into a counter transaction, just keep it simple, get there quick. So you can do no card presented, put something simple in there, pay for it, and then complete the sale, and then print it. So when you go to print, you're going to make sure you select that printer, or if it, depending on whether or not it's on the default. It is going to look a little goofy on both Chrome and Firefox, but especially Chrome. It will not print like this, I promise, if you follow these steps. It's just how the preview is. So pages, all, copies, one, layout, portrait, you're going to go to more settings. And then this is where you can, again, change the paper side margin and everything else. So paper size, again, either do 72 millimeter by receipt or 72 by 200. I would recommend by receipt. Margins set to minimum. This will allow it to get as much much of the information on all of the paper as possible. You can go custom if you want and make them however you want, but minimum is the best way to do it. And then scale, again, up to you. I would leave it at 100%. That way it's easiest to read. And then make sure you take off headers and footers and make sure background graphics is off. Headers and footers is something from the browser. All the browsers want to put a header and a footer on it. So the header is going to be the date and the time, and then the footer will be either the date and time also or something else. And they space it out so you end up printing more pages than need be. And background graphics are things you can't see. A background graphic, generally on most printers, are details that only the computer sees. And so you may want to make sure you have that off. If you leave those two on, or you forget to change the paper size, you could potentially, if you hit print out 2 feet of receipt paper. So make sure you turn headers and footers off, make sure you turn background graphics off, and then, like I said, set those margins to minimum. Then you can hit print, and it'll print it out, and you should be good to go. If you're having issues with it, or you need assistance on Firefox, give me a call or shoot me an email, and I'll walk you through it. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.